He believed his daughter had died 12 years ago, until his sniffer dog stopped in front of a baby at the airport, and everything changed. Security agent Gabriel Ruan has never doubted the instincts of his four-legged companion Levi. But on that sultry morning when the dog growled at a lifeless newborn, Gabriel discovered something no security camera could capture: the beginnings of an international child organ trafficking ring. And perhaps the forgotten thread that would lead him back to his missing daughter. A fake passport, a name that shouldn't have been on the records, a child's drawing with a symbol that's impossible to ignore. What's the real secret behind the Aurora Unit organization? And why are unregistered children silently disappearing? Stay with me until the end to find out how a dog's bark exposed one of the darkest and most thrilling plots you've ever heard, and prepare for a twist that will leave you chilled. I'd love to hear where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying this, please let me know in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely won't want to miss. Gabriel Ruan stood at the entrance of the Min Hai International Airport, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the bustling terminal. His seasoned eyes scanned the throngs of travelers, but his focus remained steady on Levi, his loyal Belgian Malinois trotting beside him. The dog's sharp instincts had always been a reliable asset in Gabriel's routine as a security agent. Today, however, an odd tension hung in the air, a sense of anticipation that made the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. "Stay sharp, boy," Gabriel murmured, patting Levi's head as they navigated through the crowd. The dog's ears perked up, a slight flick of his tail, signaling that he was on high alert. Gabriel felt a rush of pride. Levi had a remarkable ability to read situations, an intuition that had saved them both more than once. As they approached a family preparing to board their flight, Levi suddenly halted, his body rigid, growling low in his throat. Gabriel instinctively followed Levi's gaze to a couple cradling a baby in their arms. The child, swathed in a light blanket, lay unnaturally still, her face pale and expressionless. "Hey, everything okay here?" Gabriel asked, stepping closer, his voice calm but firm. The couple turned to him, their expressions unreadable. "Of course," the father replied, a tight smile on his lips. "Just waiting for our flight to Ho Chi Minh City. She was a bit fussy this morning, but she's all right now." Gabriel's gut twisted. Levi's growling intensified, and the unease in the pit of Gabriel's stomach deepened. "I need to take a closer look at her," he said, asserting his authority. "Please step aside." The couple exchanged a quick glance, and Gabriel noted a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. "Isn't that a bit excessive?" the mother protested, her voice quavering slightly. But Gabriel stood his ground, gesturing for them to comply. With a reluctant nod, they stepped back. Gabriel knelt beside the baby, Levi's low growls vibrating through the air. He gently pulled back the blanket, revealing the child's lifeless form. The baby's skin was cold to the touch, and Gabriel's heart sank as he felt for a pulse. Nothing. "Call for medical assistance," he yelled, his calm facade cracking just a bit. "This child isn't breathing." The commotion around them escalated as nearby travelers shifted their attention to the scene unfolding before them. The couple's expressions morphed from surprise to panic. "What's happening?" the father exclaimed. "There's no time!" Gabriel snapped, his focus narrowing. He could sense Levi's agitation, an instinctive response to the gravity of the situation. Moments later, medical personnel rushed to the scene, pushing through the crowd. The lead medic knelt beside Gabriel, assessing the situation. "What do we have?" she asked briskly. "Not breathing. Cold," Gabriel replied, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing within him. "No signs of trauma. I need to check their documentation." As the medic began her examination, Gabriel retrieved his phone, quickly pulling up the couple's information stored in the airport system. His heart raced as he scanned their details, noting the pristine condition of their documents. But then something caught his eye. a subtle discrepancy in the dates. "Wait a minute," he murmured, tapping the screen. "These passports, they show travel dates from weeks ago. They should not be here." "Is that true?" the medic asked, glancing up from her efforts. "What do you mean?" "Check the passport numbers," Gabriel instructed, his mind racing. "They correspond to travelers who left the country weeks ago." "Are you accusing us of something?" The mother's voice trembled, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. "No, I'm just trying to understand. But I need you both to stay here while I get the authorities involved." Gabriel's heart thudded in his chest as he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just a routine day at the airport, it was the beginning of something much darker. As the medical team continued their work, Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. The couple's calm demeanor had cracked, revealing a hint of fear that was impossible to ignore. They were hiding something. He could feel it in his bones. "Stay close, Levi," he whispered, the dog's presence a comforting anchor amid the chaos. Something isn't right. As sunbeams filtered through the dusty windows of the abandoned sanatorium, casting eerie shadows across the room. "Gabriel?" Ruan moved cautiously, his heart racing, as he scanned the dimly lit space for any sign of life. Lévy, his loyal Belgian Malinois, walked beside him, ears perked and nostrils twitching as he picked up scents that were long buried under layers of neglect. The air was stale, carrying the faint odor of antiseptic mixed with something far more sinister. "Stay close, Levi," Gabriel whispered, his voice barely above a hush. The dog responded with a low growl, his instinct sharper than ever. Gabriel felt a shiver run down his spine. He had followed countless leads in his career, but this one felt different. It was personal. The urgency to find Lina, the daughter he believed he had lost forever, propelled him forward. They entered a long corridor lined with doors, most of them swinging on rusty hinges, revealing empty rooms stripped bare of their former lives. Gabriel's pulse quickened as he recalled the informant's words. The mention of a child with a distinctive scar. He had to hold on to hope, the flickering ember that maybe Lina was alive. "Come on, girl," he murmured to himself, steeling his resolve. He reached for the doorknob of the first room, hesitating for just a moment before flinging it. Open, the room was empty save for a few tattered curtains fluttering in the breeze. He moved on, checking each door with increasing desperation. "Levi," he called softly, "let's keep moving." The dog paused, his gaze fixed on a door at the end of the corridor, a slight whine escaping his throat. Gabriel felt a surge of electricity course through him. "You sense something, boy." With a determined nod, Gabriel approached the door, his heart pounding in sync with Levi's frantic tail wagging. As he reached for the knob, he felt a sudden jolt of anxiety. What if it was just another empty room? But deep down he knew this was different. His instincts, and Levi's, were telling him otherwise. He pushed the door open, and the sight that greeted him was both heartbreaking and surreal. Inside, a small group of children sat on the floor, their faces gaunt and eyes wide with fear. The moment they saw Gabriel, a flicker of hope ignited in their expressions. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down to their level. "It's going to be okay. I'm here to help." The children remained silent, their eyes darting between him and Levi. Gabriel glanced around the room, spotting medical equipment that looked outdated and sinister. "Where's Lina?" he asked, his voice trembling with urgency. The children exchanged fearful glances, their small bodies tense. "Who's Lina?" A girl with tangled hair finally spoke, her voice barely whisper. "My daughter," Gabriel replied. "She might look like you. Please, if you've seen her." A boy with dirt-streaked cheeks stepped forward, his voice shaky. "There's a girl with a scar. She's in the next room." Gabriel's heart leapt. "Can you show me?" The boy nodded, glancing back at the others as if seeking reassurance. "But we have to be quiet. The men who brought us here don't like it when we talk." "Don't worry, I'll be quiet." Gabriel promised, his mind racing as he followed the boy down another narrow corridor. Levi stayed close at his side, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. With each step, Gabriel's heart pounded louder anticipation and fear swirling together. They reached a door that looked even more worn than the others. The boy paused, his hand trembling on the knob. "I'm scared," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "Me too," Gabriel admitted, kneeling down to meet the boy's gaze. "But I promise you're safe with me. I won't let anything happen to you." With a determined nod, the boy turned the knob and pushed the door open. The sight inside was haunting. A dimly lit room held a small figure lying on a cot, her frail body barely moving. Gabriel stepped forward, his breath hitching in his throat, as he recognized the scar on the girl's abdomen. "Lina!" he called out, his voice thick with emotion. The girl turned her head slightly, her eyes flaring with recognition. "Daddy!" she whispered, a fragile smile breaking through her pain. Gabriel felt tears prick at his eyes as he rushed to her side, kneeling beside the cot. "I found you, sweetie. I'm here." "Is it really you?" Lina asked, her voice frail but filled with hope. "Yes, it's me," he reassured her, brushing a few strands of hair from her face. "I'm so sorry it took me so long. I'm going to get you out of here." Before he could say anything more, Levi suddenly growled, his body tense and alert. Gabriel turned, sensing danger. The door slammed shut behind him, and footsteps echoed in the corridor. "Get down!" Gabriel shouted, instinctively shielding Lina with his body. The moment had come. He would do everything in his power to save his daughter, even if it meant facing the darkness that loomed outside. Gabriel Ruan stood in the dimly lit room, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and fear. His heart raced as he scanned the faces of the frightened children huddled together, their wide eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and despair. He had come too far to turn back now, and the sight of them stirred something deep within him. A drive he had thought lost to the years of grief over his daughter. "Lina," he called softly, hoping against hope that one of the faces would respond. But instead, silence hung around them like a heavy cloak. The only sound was the faint whimper of a child reaching out for comfort in the darkness. Levi, his loyal Belgian Malinois, stood at his side, his ears perked and his body tense, alert to any danger lurking nearby. As Gabriel stepped farther into the room, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was a place of despair, a forgotten corner of the world where innocence had been exploited. Then through the shadows he spotted her, a girl with a frail frame, her skin pale and her hair matted. She was clutching her abdomen, a bandage barely visible beneath the tattered clothing. "Lina," he said again, this time louder, his voice breaking with emotion. Her head snapped up, and for a moment their eyes locked. The world around them faded away as he saw the flicker of recognition in her gaze. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a breath of sound that shattered the silence. A lump formed in Gabriel's throat, and he took a step closer, desperate to bridge the distance between them. "It's me, sweetheart. It's me," he reassured her, his voice steady. "Despite the turmoil inside, I'm here to take you home." Before he could reach her, a sharp noise echoed through the corridor, causing both Gabriel and Lina to jump. The door at the far end of the room burst open, and a group of armed men stormed in, their faces masked and their intentions clear. "Get down!" Gabriel shouted instinctively, putting himself between Lina and the intruders. Levi growled low, his protective instincts kicking in, ready to defend his partner and the children. "What do you think you're doing here?" one of the men barked, leveling a gun at Gabriel. "This is none of your business." "I'm not leaving without her," Gabriel declared, his voice laced with defiance. He could feel the adrenaline surging through his veins, pushing him to act. "Step aside, or I swear—" "Or what?" The man interrupted, a sneer on his lips. "You think you can take us all on? You're outnumbered." "Maybe," Gabriel responded, his mind racing, "but I'm not alone." With a swift motion, he signaled to Levi. The dog surged forward, a blur of fur and muscle, heading directly for the intruders. In an instant, chaos erupted. Levi lunged at the nearest man, knocking him off balance and causing his weapon to discharge wildly. Gunfire rang out, and Gabriel ducked, rolling to the side as more shots fired. He could hear the panicked screams of the children behind him, and it fueled his determination. "Stay down!" he shouted, returning fire with his own weapon hitting one of the assailants in the leg. The man crumpled to the ground, howling in pain. "Dad, please!" Lina's voice broke through the cacophony laced with fear. "Don't!" "I'm not leaving you," Gabriel yelled back, his heart racing as he tried to find a way to get to her. He spotted a small window in the corner and knew they had to make a run for it. "We're getting out of here, Lina, come." On. As he sprinted toward her, Levi continued to engage the remaining men, his growls echoing in the chaos. Gabriel reached Lina, grabbing her arm and pulling her close. "We have to go now." "But the others," she protested, her eyes glistening with tears. "There's no time, we'll come back for them, I promise," Gabriel urged, his voice steady and firm. "Trust me." With a final glance back at the children, he led Lina toward the window, adrenaline coursing through him. He could hear the men, regrouping, their shouts growing louder, but he pushed the fear aside. "On three," he whispered, positioning himself next to the window. "1, 2, 3. They crashed through the glass together, landing outside in the cool morning air. Gabriel rolled to his feet, pulling Lina up with him. "Run!" he shouted, and together they sprinted into the safety of the trees that lined the property, Levi hot on their heels. As they disappeared into the cover of the forest, Gabriel's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. He had found her. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but he had his daughter back, and that was all that mattered. The cold air of the abandoned sanatorium nipped at Gabriel's skin as he stepped cautiously through the crumbling entrance. The building, once a sprawling refuge for those in need, now stood as a hollow shell, echoing with the whispers of its dark past. Levi, ever vigilant, trotted beside him, his ears perked, nostrils flaring, as he absorbed the myriad of scents that danced in the stale atmosphere. "Stay close, buddy," Gabriel murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with urgency. The weight of the investigation pressed heavily on his shoulders, each step forward a reminder of the stakes at hand. He recalled the drawing sent by the informant, an innocuous sketch of a circle on a girl's forehead, the same symbol that had haunted his dreams. The dim light filtered through the cracked windows, casting elongated shadows that danced across the peeling walls. Gabriel's heart raced as he ventured deeper into the labyrinth of corridors. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in his mind. He needed to find his daughter, Lina, but with every passing moment, the fear of failure gnawed at him. "Let's find her," he urged Levi, who seemed to sense his anxiety. The dog paused, sniffing the air, then wagged his tail as if to say, "I'm with you." They continued their search, moving through the dilapidated rooms, each corner revealing remnants of a life once lived. A child's toy, a faded photograph, a broken chair. Suddenly Levi's body tensed, and he let out a low growl, staring intently at a rusted door at the end of the corridor. Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. "What is it, Levi?" he asked, stepping cautiously closer. The dog's growl deepened, a warning echoing in the desolate space. With a determined nod, Gabriel approached, his heart pounding in his chest. "We need to check it out." He reached for the doorknob, the metal cool against his palm. With a swift motion, he turned it and pushed the door open. The room beyond was dark and cluttered, illuminated only by the faint glow of a single flickering bulb. As his eyes adjusted, Gabriel froze. There, huddled in the corner, were several children, their eyes wide with fear, and among them a girl with a familiar face, Lina. "Lina," he shouted, his voice a mixture of relief and desperation. "It's me. It's Dad." The girl's eyes widened as she recognized him, but instead of running to him, she shrank back, fear etched on her delicate features. "No, you shouldn't be here," she cried, her voice trembling. "They'll find you." "Who will?" Gabriel asked, stepping closer, his heart aching at the sight of her. "I'm here to rescue you. You're safe now. Levi is with me." Lina's gaze flickered to the dog, who sat obediently at Gabriel's side, his eyes soft and reassuring. "Levi!" She whispered, a hint of recognition breaking through her fear. "Please, Lina." Gabriel pleaded, his voice cracking. "We have to get you out of here. I've been looking for you for so long." "Dad, they'll come. You need to leave," she insisted, shaking her head. "You don't understand." Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy and approaching. Gabriel felt a surge of panic. "We have to go now," he urged, extending his hand toward her. "Trust me." Lina hesitated, her eyes darting between him and the door. "I can't leave the others," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll be trapped here. Then we'll get them out too." Gabriel promised, his determination solidifying. "But we have to move now." Just as Lina seemed to consider, the door burst open and two men in lab coats stormed into the room, their expressions dark and menacing. "Get away from her!" one of them shouted, brandishing a syringe. Gabriel instinctively stepped in front of Lina, protecting her with his body. "No!" he yelled, adrenaline surging through him. "You won't take her!" With a sudden flash of movement, Levi lunged forward, teeth bared, creating a distraction that allowed Gabriel to grab Lina's hand. "Run!" he commanded, pulling her toward the door, as Levi engaged with the men, barking fiercely. "Go, go, go!" Gabriel shouted, pushing Lina ahead of him. They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of barking and chaos fading behind them. With Sayu, Levi leading the charge, they dashed toward freedom, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift as the promise of a future glimmered ahead. The dim light of the sanatorium cast eerie shadows along the peeling walls, and the air was thick with a musty odor that clung to Gabriel's clothes like a ghost. He crouched beside Levi, who was panting softly, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. The dog's instincts were still sharp, despite the wound he had sustained. Gabriel reached down and patted Levi's head, grateful for the presence of his loyal companion. "Stay close, boy," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of dripping water and the occasional scuttle of a rat. "We need to find her." As they moved further into the abandoned sanatorium, Gabriel's heart raced. He had followed the trail of breadcrumbs that led to this desolate place, and now every step brought him closer to Lina. It had been years since he had seen her, years filled with a void that had consumed him. The thought of finally finding her was electrifying, but the fear of what they might encounter here gnawed at the edges of his resolve. "Lina," he called out softly, the name tasting like honey and ashes on his tongue. "If you can hear me, I'm here." Silence hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Just as he was about to call out again, Levi perked up, his ears twitching as he sniffed the air. Suddenly, he bolted down a narrow corridor, his paws echoing against the tile floor. "Levi!" "Wait!" Gabriel exclaimed, chasing after his dog with urgency. The corridor twisted and turned, the light barely penetrating the dark corners. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Levi stood at an open door, barking furiously. "Easy, boy," Gabriel said, trying to calm him. He peeked into the room, his heart pounding. The sight before him made his breath hitch in his throat. There, huddled in the corner, was a group of children, thin and frightened, their eyes wide with fear, and among them was a girl with a familiar scar on her abdomen. "Lina!" Gabriel gasped, his voice breaking. The girl turned, her eyes locking onto his. For a moment, time stood still. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice fragile like glass. "Lina." He rushed into the room, ignoring the gnawing anxiety that told him it might be a trap. He knelt before her, tears pooling in his eyes. "I thought I lost you. I thought you were gone." "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I missed you so much." Gabriel reached out, pulling her into an embrace, feeling her warmth against him like a balm for his aching soul. "I'm so sorry, Lina. I'm so sorry I couldn't find you sooner." Levi approached cautiously, sniffing at Lina's hand. She giggled through her tears, reaching out to pat the dog's head. "Is this Levi? I remember him." "Yes, it's Levi," Gabriel said, swallowing hard. "He's been with me the whole time." They were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching, heavy and deliberate. Gabriel's heart sank. "We need to move. They'll be coming for us," he said urgently, pulling Lina to her feet. "Who?" she asked, her eyes wide with confusion. "The people who took you," he replied, glancing over his shoulder. "We have to be quick." "Can we save the others?" Lina asked, her voice small but determined. Gabriel's heart swelled, with pride at her bravery. "Yes, we will," he promised, squeezing her hand. "But we need to be careful. Can you be brave for me?" Lina nodded, her expression shifting from fear to resolve. "I can be brave." "Good girl," he said, glancing back at the other children. "We're getting you all out of here." As they moved towards the door, Gabriel felt a surge of determination. They had come too far, lost too much. He would not let fear dictate their fate. Together with Levi leading the way, they stepped out into the shadowy corridor, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice steady. "And no matter what happens, I won't let anyone hurt you again." With Levi at the forefront, the unlikely trio ventured deeper into the unknown, the flickering light guiding their path as they prepared to confront the monsters waiting in the shadows. Gabriel stood at the entrance of the abandoned sanatorium, the chill of the morning air seeping into his bones. The old building loomed before him, its cracked walls and broken windows a testament to years of neglect. He could hear Levi's soft, anxious whines beside him, an echo of the unease churning in his stomach. They had followed the clues pieced together, the fragments of a shattered past, and now they were on the cusp of something monumental. "Stay alert, Levi," he whispered, his voice barely rising above the wind that whistled through the trees. The dog lifted his head, ears perked, and let out a low growl, sensing the tension in the air. Gabriel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He pushed the heavy door open, the rusty hinges creaking ominously, and stepped inside. Interior was dark and musty, the faint smell of decay lingering in the air. Dust danced in the beams of light that filtered through the broken windows. As they moved deeper into the building, Gabriel felt the weight of history press down on him, a history filled with pain and secrets. He pulled out his flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom, revealing peeling paint and remnants of a life long abandoned. "Let's find her," he murmured, more to himself than to Levi. The dog seemed to understand instinctively, guiding them down a narrow hallway lined with doors. Each door was a potential gateway to the past, a portal to the daughter he had lost. Gabriel's heart raced as he approached the first door, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the handle. Before he could open it, Levi suddenly stopped, his body tense and alert. The dog sniffed the air, then turned his gaze toward a door. At the end of the corridor, a door that looked newer than the others, as if it had been used recently. Gabriel's breath quickened. "Good boy," he said, and they made their way to the door. As they neared it, Gabriel could hear faint sounds coming. From behind it, the soft rustle of fabric, a muffled voice. "Stay close," he instructed Levi, who nodded his head slightly, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. Gabriel raised his hand, poised to knock, when he heard a voice, a small, trembling voice that sent a jolt through his heart. "Help me, please!" It was a child's voice, fragile and scared. Gabriel's heart sank. "Lina!" He called, his voice breaking slightly as he pushed the door open without hesitation, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Inside the room was dimly lit, and Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. There in the corner sat a girl with tangled hair and wide, frightened eyes. She was small for her age, her clothes tattered and dirt-stained. But it was the scar on her abdomen that made his heart race. "Lina!" he cried out, rushing to her side. The girl looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes, but fear lingered there too. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's me, sweetheart. I'm here." Gabriel knelt beside her, his hands shaking as he reached out to touch her shoulder. "I thought I lost you forever. Help me get out of here," Lina said, glancing nervously at the door. "They'll come back." Gabriel felt a surge of protectiveness. "I won't let anyone hurt you again. We have to be quiet." He glanced back toward the door, his instincts on high alert. "Can you walk?" "I think so," she replied, struggling to her feet. Gabriel supported her, feeling the warmth of her small body against his side, grounding him in this moment. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from the hallway, and Gabriel's heart dropped. "We need to move now," he said urgently. He guided Lina toward the back exit, the shadows seeming to close in around them. As they reached the doorway, Levi barked sharply, alerting them to the presence of a figure approaching. Gabriel turned to see a man in a white coat, flanked by 2 guards. "Stop right there!" the man shouted, his voice cold and commanding. Gabriel's instincts kicked in. "Run, Lina!" he shouted, pushing her forward as he turned to face the threat. Levi stood protectively in front of them, his growls deepening, ready to defend his family at all costs. "Get her!" the man ordered his guards, but Gabriel wasn't about to let that happen. With a surge of adrenaline, he lunged forward, ready to fight for his daughter and the chance at redemption he had thought lost forever. Gabriel stood at the threshold of the abandoned sanatorium, its crumbling facade looming like a ghost from the past. Shadows danced across the walls as the sun began its slow descent, casting long fingers of light that barely penetrated the gloom. Levi, his loyal Belgian Malinois, sniffed the air, his ears perked alert to every sound. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay, but there was something else, something metallic that sent a shiver down Gabriel's spine. "Stay close, boy," Gabriel whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. He could feel the tension in Levi's body, the way the dog's muscles coiled like springs, ready to unleash a burst of speed. They had come too far to turn back now. This was the place where his daughter Lina had been taken, and he was determined to find her. As they moved deeper into the building, the floorboards creaked underfoot, a mournful sound that echoed in the stillness. Gabriel's heart raced with each step. He had followed the breadcrumbs of information, piecing together a puzzle he had never expected to face. A hidden laboratory where children were exploited for their organs. The thought sent a wave of nausea through him, but he pressed on, driven by a primal need to save Lina. "Lina," he called softly, hoping against hope that she could hear him. "It's Dad. I'm here." The silence that followed felt suffocating, amplifying his fears. Levi stopped abruptly, his nose twitching as he caught a scent. He growled low in his throat, a warning that sent chills racing down Gabriel's spine. "What is it, boy?" Gabriel asked, kneeling beside him. With a sudden burst of energy, Levi darted down a narrow hallway, leading Gabriel into a dimly lit room at the end. The door creaked ominously as Gabriel pushed it open, revealing a sight that took his breath away. Inside, 3 children lay on hospital gurneys, their small bodies pale and still, each connected to a maze of tubes and monitors that beeped in a sterile rhythm. Gabriel's heart sank. They looked so frail, so helpless. And then he spotted her, a girl with dark hair and a scar on her abdomen, lying semi-conscious, her breath shallow. "Lina!" he gasped, rushing to her side. "Dad!" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough to ignite a flame of hope within him. "Shh, don't try to talk. I'm here to get you out," he said, his voice trembling with emotion as he brushed her hair back from her face. "Help. The others," she murmured, her eyes fluttering open, revealing a mix of fear and recognition. Gabriel nodded, swallowing hard. "I will. I promise. Just hold on." He glanced around the room, assessing the situation. Time was not on their side. He could hear footsteps echoing in the distance, and he knew they had to move quickly. He turned to Levi, who had been sniffing around the other gurneys, his instincts kicking in. "Levi, help me," Gabriel instructed, moving to the nearest child. It was a boy no older than 6, with a thin face and wide, frightened eyes. "Hey there, buddy. We're getting out of here, okay?" Gabriel reassured him, lifting the child into his arms. As he turned back toward Lina, the door slammed open, and a figure stood silhouetted against the light. It was a man in a lab coat, flanked by 2 armed guards. "What do we have here?" The man sneered, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the scene. "Get away from them!" Gabriel shouted instinctively, stepping in front of Lina, his heart racing. Levi growled, positioning himself protectively at Gabriel's side. "Such a pity," the man continued, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You really think you can just walk in here and take them? This is bigger than you, Ruin." Gabriel's mind raced. "You're wrong. I'm not leaving without them." He felt the weight of the child in his arms, and the urgency of the moment pressing down on him. "Then you'll die trying," the man replied coldly, raising a hand to signal his guards. In that instant, Gabriel felt an adrenaline rush surge through him. "Levi, now," he commanded, and the dog lunged forward, teeth bared, ready to defend his handler and the innocent lives they were trying to save. As chaos erupted, Gabriel's determination hardened. He could not fail now. Lina needed him, and he would do whatever it took to save her and the others. The air inside the abandoned sanatorium felt heavy with a chilling silence, broken only by the distant echo of dripping water. Gabriel Ruin stood at the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. Levi, his loyal Belgian Malinois, was tense at his side, ears perked and nose twitching as he scanned the dimly lit corridor ahead. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows on the peeling walls, the remnants of a once functional medical facility, now overtaken by neglect. "Stay close, Levi," Gabriel whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. He had learned to trust the instincts of his faithful companion, especially in moments like this, where danger lurked in unseen corners. The informant's words echoed in his mind. "They're here, Gabriel. You have to hurry." As they stepped further into the building, the stench of decay and something more sinister filled the air. Gabriel's stomach churned as he recalled the drawing the informant had sent. Oh, simple sketch of a girl with a haunting resemblance to his lost daughter, Lina. The symbol on her forehead, a circle, had sparked something deep within him. It was a sign, a glimmer of hope that perhaps she was still alive. "Let's find you, Lina," he murmured, determination hardening his resolve. He reached into his pocket, gripping the small flashlight that cast a narrow beam into the darkness. Ahead. Suddenly, Levi stopped, his body rigid, nostrils flaring as he caught a scent. He let out a low growl, the sound reverberating through the empty halls. Gabriel's heart raced. "What is it, boy?" He followed Levi's gaze, which was fixed on a door at the end of the corridor, slightly ajar. "Let's check it out," he said, inching closer. As they approached, the growl faded into a tense silence. Gabriel pushed the door open, revealing a room filled with dusty medical equipment, and in the corner, a small figure huddled on the floor. "Lina," he called softly, fear and hope intertwining in his chest. The figure stirred but did not turn around. "It's me, Gabriel, your father." The girl slowly turned, and Gabriel's breath caught in his throat. There before him was a girl with dark hair and wide, frightened eyes. She looked older than the last time he had seen her, but the features were unmistakable. "Dad," she whispered, a tremor in her voice. "Lina." Gabriel rushed forward, dropping to his knees as he enveloped her in his arms. The weight of 12 years of loss, pain and guilt crashed over him in an overwhelming wave. "I thought I lost you forever." "I thought you were dead," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They told me I had no family." "Who?" Gabriel demanded, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. "Who told you that?" "The people here," she said, glancing around nervously. They do terrible things. I was supposed to be taken somewhere. I don't know why they picked me." Gabriel's heart sank at her words. The realization of the horrors that had taken place in this place intensified his anger. "We're getting out of here, Lina. I promise." He glanced at Levi, who was still alert, scanning the room for any signs of danger. "But we have to be careful. There may be guards." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the corridor outside, and Gabriel's instincts kicked in. "Get back!" he shouted, pulling Lina behind him as he raised his flashlight towards the door. Levi stood protectively. At the front, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Dad, what's happening?" Lina's voice trembled with fear. "They're coming," Gabriel replied, trying to keep his own fear at bay. "We need to move now." He took a cautious step towards the door, ready to defend his daughter. Before he could react, the door swung open with a bang, and a shadowy figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. It was a man in a lab coat, flanked by 2 armed guards, their weapons drawn. "Stop right there," the man commanded, his voice cold and authoritative. Gabriel's mind raced, calculating their options. "Get behind me, Lina," he ordered, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Ruan!" the man sneered, recognizing him. "You should have stayed away. You don't know what you're getting into." Gabriel clenched, his fists ready to fight for his daughter. "I know exactly what I'm getting into, and I'm not leaving here without her." Lina clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. Gabriel's heart swelled with a fierce protectiveness. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for her future, for the chance to finally reunite their broken family. "Levi," he whispered, and the dog instinctively moved closer, ready to spring into action. "Let her go!" Gabriel demanded, standing his ground. The tension in the room was palpable, a charged silence before the storm. The man's lips curled into a smirk. "You really think you can save her?" Gabriel's gaze hardened. "I don't think, I know." And with that, the battle for Lina's freedom began. Gabriel stood at the entrance of the abandoned sanatorium, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and dread. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and rust remnants of a time when this place had been filled with life. Now it loomed before him, like a ghost, a shell of the past. Levi, his faithful Belgian Malinois, stood by his side, ears perked, body tense, sensing the weight of the moment. "Stay close, buddy," Gabriel murmured, running a reassuring hand through Levi's fur. The dog's eyes were sharp, scanning the dimly lit corridor that led deeper into the building. "We're close. I can feel it." Together they stepped into the shadows, the wooden floor creaking beneath their weight. Gabriel's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating peeling paint and shattered glass. He had followed the breadcrumbs, each clue leading him closer to the truth about his daughter. But the closer he got, the heavier the burden of his past felt. "Lina." He whispered the name, barely escaping his lips, as he imagined her face, the little girl he lost so many years ago. If only he had fought harder, sought answers sooner. But now there was a chance, a flicker of hope, that she might still be alive. As they moved through the hallways, they passed what had once been a nursery. The faded murals on the walls depicted playful animals, but now they seemed to mock him, a painful reminder of innocence lost. Gabriel paused, taking a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Just a little further," he said, more to himself than to Levi. The dog whined softly as if sensing his turmoil. Suddenly a faint sound echoed down the corridor, a soft whimpering. Gabriel's heart raced. "Did you hear that?" he asked, glancing down at Levi. The dog was already moving, leading him toward the source of the sound. They rounded a corner, and there it was, a heavy door slightly ajar. The whimpering grew louder, mixed with the sound of soft cries. Gabriel exchanged a determined glance with Levi. "We have to check it out." Pushing the door open, Gabriel stepped inside, illuminating the room with his flashlight. The sight that greeted him twisted his stomach into knots. In the middle of the room, a group of frightened children huddled together, their faces streaked with dirt and fear. And there among them was a girl with a familiar scar on her abdomen, her hair falling in disheveled waves over her shoulders. "Lina!" Gabriel gasped, his voice breaking as he took a step forward. The girl looked up, her eyes wide with a mix of recognition and terror. "Daddy!" she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The moment hung in the air, suspended in time, as Gabriel rushed toward her, dropping to his knees. "Lina, it's me!" he cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I found you!" Levi bounded in beside him, his presence a comforting weight. The other children watched with cautious eyes, unsure of what to expect. Gabriel reached out, pulling Lina into his arms, holding her tightly, as if afraid she might vanish again. "I thought I lost you forever," he murmured into her hair, his heart swelling with relief and love. "I was scared," she sobbed, burying her face against his shoulder. "They took me. I tried to escape." "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry, but I'm here now. We're going to get out of here, I promise." Gabriel felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce determination to keep her safe. He looked around the room, assessing the situation. "Where are the others? Are you all okay?" Lina nodded, but her eyes darted to the door. "They'll come back. The people in white coats. They didn't want us to leave." Gabriel's stomach twisted at the thought of what they had endured. "We have to move quickly. Levi and I will get you all out of here. Stay close to me." He turned to the other children, his voice steady but urgent. "Listen to me. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. We're going to escape, but you need to trust me." As he spoke, Levi sat alert beside him, watching the door, every muscle tense. Gabriel felt a rush of gratitude for his loyal companion. "Let's go, Levi," he said quietly, knowing they had to act fast. The door creaked ominously as Gabriel pushed it open further, ready to face whatever lay beyond. The thrill of hope surged through him, mingling with the fear of what might come next. "Stay behind me," he instructed Lina and the other children, "and whatever happens, don't look back." With his heart pounding in his chest, he stepped into the unknown, ready to fight for his daughter and the lives that depended on him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dilapidated sanatorium, Gabriel Ruan felt the weight of years pressing down on him. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rusted metal, a stark reminder of the horrors that had taken place within these walls. He glanced at Levi, his loyal Belgian Malinois who stood alert beside him, ears perked up ready for any sign of danger. "Stay close, boy," Gabriel whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. Levi responded with a soft whine, his deep brown eyes reflecting an understanding that transcended words. This was a place where they both knew the stakes were higher than ever before. As they crept down the narrow corridor, the sound of muffled cries echoed through the halls. Gabriel's heart raced. They were close. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. its beam cutting through the darkness, revealing peeling paint and shattered windows. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, a mixture of fear and determination, fueling his every step. "Lina," he called softly, hoping that somehow she could hear him. "I'm here. I'm coming for you." The name felt foreign. On his tongue, a name he had long buried beneath layers of grief and regret. But now it was alive, pulsating with urgency, driving him forward. As he approached a door at the end of the corridor, Levi suddenly halted, growling low in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Gabriel whispered, kneeling beside his dog. He scanned the area, his instincts kicking in. Something was off. Just then the door creaked open, revealing a figure in a white lab coat, eyes wide with shock. It was a doctor, the same one he had seen in the photographs from the documents he had uncovered. The man's face twisted into a grimace as he reached for a concealed weapon. "Get back!" Gabriel shouted, stepping in front of Levi. Before he could react, the doctor fired a shot. The sound reverberated through the empty hall, and in an instant, Levi lunged forward, intercepting the bullet meant for Gabriel. "Levi!" Gabriel cried, watching in horror as his faithful companion yelped in pain, collapsing to the floor. "Fool! You should have stayed away!" The doctor spat, panic driving his actions. "You have no idea what you're meddling with." Gabriel's heart shattered. He rushed to Levi's side, his hands trembling as he cradled the dog's head. "Stay with me, buddy. Stay with me." Levi's breathing was shallow, his body trembling as he looked up at Gabriel, a flicker of life still shining in his eyes. "Help! Emma!" Gabriel shouted at the doctor, his voice laced with desperation. "You can't just let him die." But the doctor only smirked, backing away. "He's just a dog. You're too late for everything, Ruin. The project will continue with or without you." Fury surged through Gabriel. With Levi's life hanging in the balance, he pushed himself up, fueled by a primal instinct to protect his partner. "You think I'll let you get away with this?" In a flash, he lunged at the doctor, tackling him to the ground. The two struggled, the doctor fighting to regain control of his weapon. Gabriel grunted, his fists connecting with the man's face, fueled by years of pent-up grief and anger. "You took everything from me," he yelled, each word filled with raw emotion. "I won't let you take any more." With a final surge of strength, Gabriel managed to disarm the doctor, sending the gun skidding across the floor. The doctor let out a strangled cry, scrambling backward as Gabriel rose, adrenaline coursing through him. "Now tell me where my daughter is," Gabriel demanded, his voice low and threatening. The doctor's eyes darted around, calculating his options. "You don't know what you're asking for," he hissed, trying to regain his composure. "You think you can just walk out of here with her? You're outnumbered." Gabriel glanced back at Levi, who was struggling to rise, his loyal spirit refusing to succumb. "If you think I'm outnumbered, you don't know me at all." Just then a faint voice echoed down the hallway. "Daddy!" Gabriel froze, heart pounding in his chest. "Lina?" "Yes, I'm here." The doctor's face drained of color. "No, you can't." Gabriel didn't wait for him to finish. He bolted down the hallway, guided by the sound of his daughter's voice, the memory of her face imprinted in his mind. "Lina, I'm coming." As he rounded a corner, he found her, tied to a chair, fear etched on her young face, but a spark of recognition lighting her eyes. "Daddy!" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Gabriel rushed to her side, his heart bursting with a mixture of joy and relief. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." He quickly worked to untie her, his hands shaking with emotion. "We're getting out of here, I promise." From behind him he heard the doctor's footsteps approaching, but in that moment nothing else mattered. Lina was alive, and he would do whatever it took to protect her. As he freed her, Levi, injured but still loyal, limped beside them, a steadfast guardian, ready to defend both father and daughter from the darkness that threatened to consume them. Together, they would escape this nightmare and finally reclaim what had been lost for far too long.